Okay, so today we're going to be mixing some drums. My drums. I've already done this before, but I thought it would be a good lesson to show everybody what I like to do. Along here, from overhead left to tom 3, I have 9 channels. I have 2 overheads, a left and a right. I have a room mic, a kick drum, a snare top and a snare bottom, and toms 1, 2 and 3. First thing I am going to do is open a bus. So to open a bus, all I am going to do is hit Control T. It's a new track. There you go. This is your bus. Secondly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this first track here, this overhead left, hold shift, move along down to tom 3. Click that and it will highlight all of those tracks. Now I'm just going to hold Alt, hover over this send and receive routing button that you can see my cursor over, and just click that and you'll see all those blue lights disappear. Now what that blue light is, as I hover over this track, which I am now going to name Drum Bus, the blue light sends all of these and all of these to the master. This is your master. Now what you want is just your drum bus going to the master channel. The rest of these we are going to send. So we're going to create a send. You can just create the first one, and then I just like to drag along all the way across, and there we go. Now, if I hit play, there's my drums, and now if I pull down the bus, I pull down all the levels. Now, what I like to do from here is I'll put my overheads into a separate bus. I'm going to delete the sends to the bus from the overheads. I'm going to create another bus, and I'm going to call this OH bus for overhead bus, and then I'm going to send those two to the overheads. I'm going to remove this from the master send, and I am going to send this to my drum bus. Now I can control my overheads, cymbals separately from the rest of the kit. Now I'm just getting shells. Now bring the cymbals up. Now this is unmixed, so we'll start from here. Now what I like to do is just take a listen with all the faders down, and then I'm going to bring up both of my overheads to a decent level. I like to aim for around about -18, -6, somewhere in between there. You don't want to be too loud, you want to leave some headroom. So we'll just get a quick listen to that. Cool. Next, I'm just going to pan them left and right. So I'll take me left, pan it left, take me right, and I'll pan that right. And that will widen up the entire sound of the drum kit. Now it might not come across on a phone that good, so please do use headphones. Great. Now what I like to do from here, while it's playing, is slowly bring up my room mic. Now you can hear the difference without the room mic there. Fills it in nicely. I don't like it to be too loud, you just want it to be sort of just enough so when you take it away you know it's missing. Round about there for me. Next up I'm going to do exactly the same with the kit. The kick drum, the bass drum, sorry. Starting from here, I will bring it up. Again with a snare. Now you might see this little button here that is highlighted blue. This is a phasing version. We'll talk about that later. But being in phase is key to everything when it comes to drums and mixing them. Again, I'm just going to bring in the snare bottom. Now that right there. So a good way to find that your snare drum isn't in phase with the rest of the kit, in my case this snare bottom, you'll notice that it goes thin. Now if I leave this on and I'll just have the overheads, take the kick out. Now when I take it away you'll realise it becomes fatter. That's what you want. That's a bit thin there because the snare's out of phase. Put it back in, reverse the phase or invert the phase. It puts it in phase. So now for here, we want to find a tom section. Somewhere with lots of toms. Now this is a lot of floor toms, so I'm just going to bring that in. So you can hear how thin it goes. Put it back in. It's always important to check phase. Okay, so for now that sounds good to me. The next thing that I would do is open up another drum bus, which is our parallel compression bus. Open up a send, or another track, sorry, a bus, and I'm going to call this Drum Crush. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to open up a compressor. I am using the SSL compressor, which is a great compressor. There's stock plugins you can use. Yeah, so I'm using the SSL solid state logic compressor, the master bus compressor people call it. It's a bus compressor is what it is, but it works really, really well for drums. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the threshold back down. A sort of fast to medium attack, fast release. It's metal drums, you want it to open and close pretty quickly. You can't change this, it'll all depend on the type and style of music that you are doing. You'll dial it in once you know what you're looking for. Anyway, so what I'm going to do for this is I am going to play the drums. You can see that the compressor is doing nothing at the moment. If we pull it up, you can see it starts to kick in. Now, I like to aim for around about 2 to 3 dB of compression in the louder parts. And that seems to be doing fine there. You can see the needle. Now, you might not be able to hear anything at the moment, but once I start pushing this fader up, you'll hear what it's actually doing to the mix. If I solo this out, mute it, sorry. I may even push that a little bit harder. Okay, that is good for me. So next up, I'm going to start adding some gates. Now, gates are very important when it comes to drums. Most people would start EQing from here, maybes. I'm going for gates. My first place to start gating would be my kick drum. We'll want that nice and short and snappy. So I do have a gate here. Now, there will be, depending on the DAW, the DAW, the workstation that you're using, you might have some stock plugins that already have gates. I'm sure they work fine. The one I'll be using is a FabFilter, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with by now, especially if you're into mixing. FabFilter is probably up there with some of the best. A lot of people like to use Waves as well. I've got a lot of Wave plugins. It's honestly down to what you like and what you know. I wouldn't get in the habit of buying loads of plugins, but that's another story for another day. Anyway, going to be using the Pro G. It's a great gate, so we're going to take a look here. Get rid of all this. Let's just listen to the kick. If I take this gate off, it's not too bad. You can't really hear a lot of the kit. But we'll just throw that on there and it cuts it right out. To be fair, I didn't have to do much to that. I just turned that on and there you go. It's not going to work like that every time. You will have to dial it in, but sometimes you will just get lucky. And obviously the faster the bass drums and things like that, the harder it will be to gate things. If you've got a lot of things going on in the mix. Slower music, it'll be a lot easier to gate stuff. But if you've got something like a heavy thrash metal or a death metal track, it might become a bit difficult to be able to dial it in so it's opening and closing as fast as you need it to be. I'm quite happy with how that is sounding, so I'm just going to leave that like that and move on to the snare. So I'm just going to drag that across here, find ourselves a nice lively snare part. See, that's cutting the snare right out there, which I don't like. So I'm going to loop this section, then we're going to try and dial this in a little bit. The thing is, I want to retain some of that snare tail. Now, you don't need all of it there because a lot of your snare is going to be in the overheads as well, if that's the sort of sound you're going for. I'm fairly happy with that for now. But next we're going to move on to the toms. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to find a tom section and I'm just going to loop it from there. This is the part of mixing that me wife hates, because she can hear me downstairs or upstairs. I'm upstairs, she's downstairs, and I'm in my studio room, and she'll be able to hear me looping a single section of music over and over and over again. I'm glad she puts up with me sometimes. Anyway, toms. Okay, I'm just going to do the same sort of thing. I'm just going to try and dial this in as best as I can. I don't mind the snare at the end of that, so that's fine for me. See, some people like, especially with drums, gating, and then obviously nowadays and a lot of modern metal gates, and it really depends how you're doing it. A lot of people are using triggers these days to help trigger them to open gates. It's really a hit and miss job on kind of what you are looking for. Myself personally, I have a reference track open. We'll talk about reference tracks another time, but for instance, the sort of kit sound that I'm going for is from Testament's Low album. Sort of live, wide open sound. Oh, actually, sorry, no, this isn't Testament. This is a Toxic Holocaust, but still another live sound and kit that I really like the sound of. I don't like things to sound too tight, which a lot of modern metal does. A lot of modern metal sounds far too over-processed, but I'm not a professional. I'm just an amateur giving opinions at this point. Anyway, I've set up some gates. Let's take a listen to what the kit sounds like now. Okay, that's sounding okay to me for now. A good thing to do is to get used to listening in mono. Now, I'm lucky that Reaper has a mono button. Some DAWs might not. An easy way to do this would be to add, say if you go to a plugin here, and you just get a mono version of a plugin, put it to your master bus, and it will put all of your mix straight through into mono, and you can listen to it that way. If not, the DAW button is here. I'm pointing to it like you can see it. I know it's on screen. So get used to listening in mono. So it's a good way to balance your mix. You got to think of what people will be listening to your music on. So most people these days will listen to music through YouTube on a mobile, or TikTok or Instagram. There's a lot of things these days get forced through those medias, so it's always good to check your mix in mono. Also, it is really great for helping you balance the mix, because in a stereo field, yes, you can hear everything, but once it all gets squashed together, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between what's actually going on, what was playing what. So you set it to mono. You take a listen. Now if I turn mono off, you'll hear the difference if you're wearing headphones. And then you can see it shrinks it down. Now, a good mix, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference between stereo and mono through a phone or something. It should always sound the same, so this is why it's good to check your mixes in mono. Now for me, I can hear everything okay-ish. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another bus. You don't have to do this, I just like to have full control of the drum kit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a bus here. I'm going to to remove these from the drum bus. I'm going to send this now tom bus to the drum bus, and each of these will be going to my tom bus. So now when I'm playing sections, I can have full control of the toms. Okay, so yeah, I opened up a tom bus. That just allows me to have a better control of the tom mix, having a tom bus. Now, EQing, I'm going to put an EQ on the toms. The thing is, with the toms, and I don't think some people realise, when you are boosting things that are being recorded by a microphone, certain things are being picked up by that microphone. So if you are boosting, say, let's open up, I've got a Pro Q3 here, right? Okay, say we boost up 2.5K in the toms, for example, that is going to boost everything else that it picks up. So cymbals, for instance, is what this is going to boost. So you need to be mindful of that, because you might be boosting somewhere like this in the hi-hats, the cymbal region, sorry, and maybe bringing, let's see now, let's solo this. So you're going to boost all the way up here. You wouldn't, but let's say you did. All of that frequency eventually is going to build up along the line. If you're boosting that 2.5K, 5K, whatever, throughout the mix, it's going to get louder and louder and louder and louder, to the point that you're just thinking, why does me mix sound harsh and tinny? Well, it's because you boosted 2.5K throughout the entire fucking thing, or wherever you boosted. It was just an example. But since we've got this up, let's do some EQ on the overheads. Okay, so what I would do here is I'm going to remove this one. I'm going to remove the bottom 200. Just takes away that low rumble. You might not be able to hear this through a phone, but if you have some headphones on, you'll be able to hear it takes away that low rumble. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of a cleanup, sort of. People watching this might be thinking, what's he doing that for? Why is he doing this? Well, because this is the way I'm doing things, and until I know better, this is the way I'm doing it. If you have constructive criticism, please leave a comment. If you're just going to be a dick, move on, because Rome wasn't built in a day. We all walked before we ran, so get it up you. Anyway, now that's curing half my problem there. That sounded a little bit harsh to me. I'm going to pull that back along about 7.5K. I'll make that dynamic. Is it dynamic? Did I do that already? Yes, I did. The reason why Pro Q3 is great for this, it is one of the top EQs out there. A lot of people like to use it. But making your EQ curve dynamic creates movement in your mix. Things can bounce, and you can see where that harsher frequency was, and it'll pull it down, but it lets it rest back to where it was and keeps everything in check. Reduces the harshness a little bit. See if I take that out there, you can hear what it's doing. Off, on. Now, what that's going to do is, because it's removing a lot of the rumble, that's going to leave room for the kick drum, because this is where the space is occupied for the kick drum. All of this sort of 60 to 100 hertz region is where your kick drum lives. You got to think of it like a jigsaw piece. Like, everything in a mix has its place. Your bass drum and your bass guitar live down the low end. All of your mid-range is sort of all your melodies and the things that your ears really like to listen to and pick up. And then your high ends is all of your air, the crispness and clarity, maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Who knows? Now, you'll notice I forgot that I was even listening in mono. The sign of a good mix. Sign of a good balanced mix. So we'll turn it off. Actually, we'll leave it on, then we'll turn it off. If we take the effects out, you can hear not loads of difference, just cleaner. Rid of loads of rumble. So, the next thing I am going to do is compress the absolute shit out of this room mic. First, I'm going to EQ it a little bit. Then I'm going to compress the shit out of it, so we'll go from there. When it comes to a room mic, I suppose it really depends what you have. I have a single mono room mic right at the back of the room, so it picks up the rest of the room. Some people will have a spaced pair of room mics, left and right. I didn't have that at the time, so I have a single mono room mic. Now, when it comes to EQing it, I suppose that depends what you are looking for. One of the best sort of explanations is a room mic should make a drum kit sound like it's next door. So that's sort of the way I've been looking at it, because you want your room mic to sort of pick up the room. See, there's a lot of harshness in this already that I don't really need, because I don't need it to fill cymbal space, so I can get rid of a lot of the high end. Right, and then next I'm just going to clear up some rumble, and then I'm just going to remove some dirt. I want rid of that boxy, plasticky baseball sound. So I mentioned I was going to compress the absolute shit out of this. And to do this, I'm going to use a CLA 76. Okay, the CLA 76. I'm going to be using the Bluey. I prefer the Bluey over the Blackie. So what I'm going to do is we're going to solo the overhead. And when I say compress the shit out of it, I mean compress the absolute shit out of it. It is a room mic and you want to hear the room. I'm going to turn this down a sec. We're going to push right into it. I'm going to go for a fast attack, slow release, and just push shit out of it. With it off, with it on. Now, it might sound a bit messy and sloppy, but let's take that out and we're going to slowly pull it into the overheads. Right, let's take a listen to what's going on so far. See, you'll notice though, the kick drum seems to stand out a lot more, and so does the snare drum, and I haven't even touched them. This is all the overheads and the room mic, and basically the full kit sound is coming from those mics. I'm going to open another book. This is how I would do it. So you're seeing it how I would actually go through it. I'm going to open up a snare bus, because I have a snare top and a snare bottom. I like to control them both. Right, from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the snare first. I'm also going to add a compressor. I'm using a Pro C2 on this. Different compressors, different things, I suppose. I'm going for a C2 on this. I am also going to compress the kick with the same compressor. I'm using this one because this has the ability to sidechain, whereas the SSL doesn't. Or I don't know how to on it, but I know how to sidechain on this one, and I will be sidechaining the kick drum and bass drum, but that is for another conversation. But for now, snare. Little bit of boost in the 200 region. I've cut a little bit here. That's what I was saying. So you got to think of what else you're boosting. You might think that you're just boosting the snare drum, but in the background you can hear cymbals. So every time you boost something, them cymbals go up with it. So you just need to be mindful of everything that you're boosting. Eventually paints a bigger picture. Okay, for the kick, we're going to go across here. Now, I must say, what I'm doing here, I'm doing purely just to show you guys how to go about it. As a whole, I would never solo stuff. I would do this as a complete mix. So I would have everything running and I would slowly go through the drums and make it sit. unless all I had was the drums. Then I would go through it just as a whole and make the kit sound how I wanted. Let's continue with the kick drum. So for this, without even thinking about it, I know I'm going to be boosting about 65 to 70 hertz. This is where I like a bass drum to sound. It's where I think it gives a bit of push. So that's where I'm going to start with. I'm going to cancel that off and you'll hear the difference. Just a little bit there. I'm listening for that knock. Right about there. I like that. Now you're looking for that basketball-y sound. Bit helicopter that. Yeah, get rid of that. Another thing that I used to do as well, and a lot of new producers do, don't do this. Don't get a big spike and just start panning, looking for problem. Because if you do that, you're going to find a problem with everything you do. Like, of course it sounds like a problem. You've just boosted every frequency in the range. Everything's going to sound like a problem. Don't do that. Listen for what you can hear, then find that. Don't just go looking. Listen. A lot of these sort of style EQs, they don't help either. I mean, this EQ, if I hold my mouse over here, this will give a load of examples of problems in the frequency range. So fuck. They're not my problems. That's the computer's problem. Some people will read that and go, oh, that's where I need to drop it. I need to boost it there, or I need to cut it there. No. You need to listen to what you're doing and stop reading graphs. Don't listen with your eyes. It's what they're for. So, that sounds good to me so far. Okay, I'm coming over to about 3K. Now, this is where your beta lives. Now, all your bass drum itself lives down the bottom end here. But your beta, that's slapping, lives up here. Like I've said before, I wouldn't ever EQ a bass drum in solo. You don't know where that needs to cut through. So you've got the whole band playing. Obviously, you can hear the rumble of a bass drum, but you can't hear that slap that you're looking for. So this is where you'd come. Round about your 2.5 to your 4.5. I want to live around here for a little bit, and then just see how that feels, and then we can change it later. So it's getting to a point where I sort of like it. Getting to. Now, for the toms, I'm not going to do anything drastic. So the high tom, I'm going to cut about 100 hertz on it. In fact, it looks like I can go more. But again, don't look. Listen. I'm literally just going to pull out some dirt and stuff. And then sort of slowly work your way down. So my last one was like 150. This is be 120. I'm not doing anything drastic with EQ, just literally cleaning. Most of my beef is going to be living in this song. There's a lot of floor tom goes through this song. Kind of want to keep a lot of beef, but you don't want to build up rumble in the low end. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly point the pan. So I like to pan the toms like I would have them in real life. So I have my snare drum sit obviously between the center of my legs. Now, most 5-piece kits, you'd expect a bass drum, a tom, a tom, a tom. First tom would normally be directly center of your snare, then your second tom, and then your third tom. Whereas my drum kit, I have 2 bass drums. My snare drum sits directly in the center, and then I have 2 immediate toms, one to the left and one to the right of the snare. So the sort of panned about 25 to 30% each way. So I'll pan this about 30% here. Now I'm going to pan this one about 25. In fact, no, I'm going to pan this about 25, and then I'm going to pan this about 30, and then this one about 35 to get the sort of drummer's perspective. When mixing drums for music, mix for the drummer's perspective. Mixing drums for the audience perspective as if you're listening to the band live is wrong. Most people who listen to music that are sitting out stage and listening to the headphones, or most of these people will not give a shit where the drum kit is panned. They'll not even notice. A fucking drummer will pan it from the drummer's perspective, because the first person to complain that it sounds wrong is the drummer, 100%. So I'm going to pan that like that. Now you can hear the difference. You can hear the toms go around. It fits better with the overheads. Sounds a lot better. Right. I'm going to do one last thing in this video before I leave, and that is adding a reverb send. Now, I like to send not the entire kit. Sometimes it'll just be the snare drum. Depends what you need. So I'm going to open up another track, drum verb, and I am going to add a reverb. FabFilter R. I'm going to use a preset on this just to get it started. Let's look for a... It's rare that I use a preset. I was hoping they had a snare plate. There we go. I am going to send my snare bus to that. We are going to go pre-fader. If you solo this, this is your snare going through just the reverb. Sounds horrible at the moment. EQ your reverbs. That's always, this is what this is here for. Something like that will do me fine. It's not too long. Obviously in this context, you don't know what your mix is going to need, what reverbs you want. Remember, this is purely just examples and showing you how to do things. So let's have a listen to everything we have so far. So if you want to turn down your reverb, you literally just pull down your fader, and then you can increase it for more reverb. So there you go. This is sort of how I mix drums. There's a whole lot more that I haven't touched on, a whole lot more that I would like to explain, but I'm sort of just hitting points as I go along. In the future, I'm going to try and write out an actual lesson plan, if you will, sort of a tutorial based set of videos that I will start putting onto my YouTube channel, and I will also start cutting down and putting onto my TikTok channels. Anyway, this is sort of how that went. I'm not sure how it sounds across your end, because I'm still in the middle of trying to work out this OBS streaming software, recording software. I'll bring it up, you'll be able to see it. This is the program I use. This is OBS. It screams, grabs everything off my computer and allows me to do what I'm doing here. It is a great piece of software and it is absolutely free. I'm sure a lot of gamers already know about this, because this is probably the program they're all using when it comes to the likes of streaming on Twitch and other platforms. It's a great thing. If you're interested, OBS is what I'm using. But for now, that's the end of me drum tutorial mix thing. Love you all and have a great fucking day, guys. Hope to see you in the next one.